So episode 4 of season 3 of One Punch Man just dropped, and I do have mixed feelings, to be honest, and to be completely frank with you guys, it's not something that I enjoyed. The things that happen in this episode, when I've read them, even though the manga doesn't contain any animations of movements, things landed for me much better. There are good things about this episode, as well as very bad stuff in this episode. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There are some things that could have been handled better, as I always say. A considerable amount of sticking shots that stays for too long, approximately 10, 15 to 20 seconds, with really bad art. At least when you have a sticking shot that lasts for too long, make the art look good. But when you have the art looking bad and it's sticking for too long, you're just asking for people to criticize it. But anyways, let's now talk about the episodes from start to finish. Now, the Garou scene right here is the most controversial thing in this episode, to be honest. I cannot really understand why they chose this compositing settings or coloring when it comes to this scene where we already have a really good one from the teaser. Just get rid of that blur effect, and that's it. As a graphic designer, I do understand that the color dark blue sometimes indicates consciousness, precision, given a serious and reflective feel, but I highly disagree with this choice. I think this scene was much better in the teaser than the actual episode. There are other few changes, like adding a thick line art in his traps, and his full eye is not fully red for some reason, and I don't understand why. But again, people would say that this is only due to hyper-analyzing the scene and it's not really that important. The only reason I'm highlighting this is because his left eye was already red, so why change it to not being fully red? It just doesn't make any sense. But I actually liked the way he stood up and how his body transformed. It was handled really well, in my opinion. It looked even better than the teaser. But you still have some very weird transitions. For example, take a look at this one. Literally, these types of transitions are what makes this season look stiff. He's standing up, at least animated a little bit, that he's now looking at the sky. But for him to being bending in that position and then the next scene literally is him looking at the sky, it just looks completely weird. However, I think this scene landed its purpose. It's dense, the OST looks good, and I think the whole scene is not that bad, it's good. Now we cut to an outside look of the Hero Association headquarters, and it actually looks pretty good. The whole scene with Seeking God and Child Emperor, I didn't find anything that is problematic. The scenes were not sticking too much on the screen, and there are some minor movements. Actually, there is this one scene where Seeking God is leaning towards the wall, and they do have this in-between transition. You literally see his leg before he leans to the wall, which is something that they are missing a lot in this season. For example, in the previous episode, we see Dr. Kuseno being inside the house, and there's no motion, no animation, no indication of him entering the house. It's kind of lacking that way. Now, the best part of this whole episode, I think, is the hot pot scene, especially at the start. I really loved the samurai-ish kind of OST. It was actually handled way better than I thought it would be. This is actually a scene where zooming out from the primary focus actually works, unlike the first episode with Sweet Mask and the Samurai's Disciple scene where it looked really weird to zoom out for that long. And to be frankly honest with you guys, the only scene that comedically landed well for me better than the manga is the hot pot scene. I actually laughed so hard while watching this scene, as the voice actors, I think, did a really good job conveying their emotions and feelings towards the hot pot. I really liked it. Some artistic choices are done really well, like the Genesis scene right here that is even better than the manga, because in the manga you don't see his hand holding the meat. Pause. But I'm guessing people would actually hate the long shots of them eating at the table. It is supposed to be that way. The art is kind of rough around the edges, but the scene didn't really look stiff to me, as it is supposed to be that way. They should have emphasized more on the art because the scene is gonna last for too long, but it is not something that annoyed me. So I'm fine with it. Now this scene right here just hits completely different, and if you know, you know. I was watching this and completely thinking about a different context that is not related to the episode. It is just insane how things are connecting to each other, and if you know, you know. I'm obviously not gonna spoil, but this scene is just made me forget about the episode for like 5 seconds. Now, I'd say this is where my issues with the episode starts. The second part of the episode, where Garou finds the hideout, I don't think anything is problematic here. He finds the hideout, he enters, and he goes in the hall. Pause. Now, the next scene, we have King still sleeping in Saitama's apartment, and one thing I forgot to mention about King in the prior scene, which is the hotpot scene, I love how they made the stains look like blood. In the manga, it was not apparent that much. This actually helps a scene that would be happening in the next episode, and I really loved how they colored it this way. It's a good addition. The manga didn't really emphasize that well. But this scene also has what I told you guys before, which is the lacking transition between a movement and another movement. So King was sleeping right here, and then he wakes up. You don't see him waking up. He's magically up. You know, like you don't see that motion or animation of him waking up. And I think these stuff are simple, but they make a huge difference. When you don't have these transitions, it makes the scene looks hella stiff. Now, the next scenes of King taking out the trash and meeting up with the staff members that were waiting outside of his apartment, and then the Narinki scene talking to Sick and God, I didn't have any problems with them. The next scene, specifically regarding the meeting, is really annoying. I did not like this scene at all. Many still shots and very weird art. Now, the scene that happened right after with the S-Class heroes entering the room, I think it was done really well. I actually really loved it, and I liked the movement and the artistic choice for every character. All of them exhibited this crazy aura, except for obviously Puri Puri Prisoner, and this shot of all the S-Class heroes is much better than the one we've seen in the first pre-animated trailer. But what comes after just throws this out of the window, to be honest. Now, one thing I want to mention regarding the 3 new monsters that we've seen walking and searching for Garou, they still didn't reveal their names and what threat level they're in, but I don't think it's a spoiler to say a name of a character. So this mouse looking monster, I was really surprised by his voice. Absolutely no aura. It made me think to actually downgrade him on the ranking list of demon level monsters, to be honest, just based on his voice. But regardless of that, the scene is adapted well, there isn't any problems with it. But what comes after, which is the Royal Ripper and Garou scene, the animation isn't that crazy, right? It's decent, but some components are completely butchered, to be honest. For example, if you compare this to the manga, his eyes right here should have been drawn this way, just to highlight how pissed he is. In the anime, it doesn't look that personal, if you know what I mean. But I actually liked some additional things, like the shot of him opening his fist to catch the sword. This doesn't really exist in the manga, it's just a panel after another. So an addition is always pleasant, but the animation here isn't really something that blows your mind or anything like that. It's decent, it's a good cliffhanger, and that's about it. One thing people actually complained about regarding the last scene of Royal Ripper going up against Garou, and I think they're completely right, is the color of the Whirlwind Iron Cutting Fist. The official color is pink, or you can at the very least make it red, but instead they actually use the color blue. Reasons this is kinda problematic, and it's very crucial to stick with the official coloring, is because when Garou used it right here, he didn't specify what type of technique he's using. He didn't say the Whirlwind Iron Cutting Fist. He just used it to destroy Royal Ripper. So a lot of casual fans that doesn't really pay attention or doesn't really understand how the Water Stream Rock Smashing Fist works, they still think it's the same technique he has been using from the start, instead of understanding that this scene right here is an indication for Garou's copying and adapting skills. So I think it's very crucial to make a coloring distinction between the two abilities or other abilities that he'd be using in the future, just to indicate and highlight Garou's growth as a character, because that's literally the point of this arc. This something can be changed overnight, by the way. It's not really hard to change the color from blue to red or pink, so I hope they're gonna change it in the Blu-ray version, because these things actually matter for the One Punch Man fans and for the story as a whole. Spoiler alerts for people who did not read the manga, you need to leave right now. I see you next time. So this episode covered specifically 30 pages of chapter 89 and 37 pages of chapter 90. And based on the reveal title for the next episode, which is the Monster King Orochi, I'm guessing the next cliffhanger, or where the episode is gonna end, is going to be with the appearance of the Monster King Orochi going up against Garou, which means they're gonna cover the rest of chapter 90, the entirety of chapter 91, and stop at 24 pages of chapter 92, exactly where where the Monster King Orochi appears, which makes me question this whole pacing of this season. I don't actually understand how they would be reaching the Monster King Orochi going up against Saitama at episode 12, since, as I predicted back in the day based on the pacing of season 2, I thought the fight of Orochi versus Garou would be on episode 4, but no, it's not even in episode 5, it's going to be in episode 6, which means in order to reach that fight, that climax of the season, they'd be needing to remove a lot of scenes. Maybe they think they're irrelevant, like some heroes fighting against the monsters in the surface that a lot of people are actually waiting for. I truly do not know what they're gonna do, and hopefully they make good choices, because to be perfectly honest, the problem with season 3 is not just there is no animation, because last episode and the one prior we did have some movements, it's the choices that are made production wise. You can't be having OSTs that are sad in a comedic scene, you cannot have the limited explanation being paced extremely fast, treated as a normal conversation where it needed to be emphasized, and you certainly cannot remove relevant scenes that makes the One Punch Man story very interesting just to reach the climax of the season, which is Orochi going up against Saitama. I hope they understand what's important and what's not, and I hope they make good decisions.